Today I'm going to be showing you how you can use a pair of these to set up a forge weld. Hi, I'm Dennis Frechette and welcome back. Today I'm going to be forging a pretty unusual pair of tongs that I'm going to use in the forge to set up a forge weld. They're basically an oversized pair of tweezers, and I'm going to be using them to work in the fire to set up small pieces that I need to forge weld. I decided to try this idea when I was welding the tips on a pair of dividers from a video that I did recently. And I got them to set okay, I got them in the fire, but they kept moving out of position once the flux heated up. So I decided I needed something that I could use to get in there and reposition these pieces without having to take them out and start the whole process over. So that's the thought process that brought me to this point. And here's the video of how I made the tongs and the actual experiment that I'm going to do to see if the whole thing's going to work out. So hope it helps you out. I'm going to be making this pair of tweezers out of one piece of 1/4 by 1/2 inch flat bar, and this piece happens to be roughly 48 inches long, so that's what I'm going to work with. This design has two long arms, and they both meet at the top in a circular spring that's going to work the actual tong. So I know I need roughly 10 inches for that spring area, so that leaves 19 inches for each leg. I'm going to start by hammering out the spring section, and you can see here how I've simplified the measuring just by putting a slight kink in the bar. All I'm trying to do here is reduce the thickness of the material at this point, just so that I have tongs that are fairly easy to use but still sturdy enough to take the pressure that I need to hang on to whatever it is that I'm working with. The only thing that you have to keep in mind when you're forging this section is that this is a spring. Even though this is a mild steel bar and I'm not going to be heat treating it, it's still a length of steel that is going to be flexing repeatedly. So if there are any thin areas or any sharp transitions, those areas are going to want to flex more than the areas next to it. So that's going to create a stress point, and over time it could cause this spring to fail. So you just need to take your time. Don't try to make too many changes in one heat. Just work at this gradually until you get the thickness that you want. Do a lot of hammer refining as the bar is cooling down in a red heat. And at the end of it, if you can't get the hammering all the way right, take it to a grinder, grind it flat and even, just do what you have to do to get this piece to function properly. It'll pay off in the long run. If you know that you don't have the hammering skills to pull this off, just be honest with yourself and start the process, but fall short of the final dimension that you're looking for. Just get the practice in, get as far as you can, but just be aware that the final step is going to be going to the grinder and grinding away everything that isn't right. But you still need to get the practice in, so you might as well take it as far as you can. You may surprise yourself and finish the whole job with no problem. Once you have the bar thickness the way that you want, you can start forging this section into a large loop. If you have a bending jig or a form that's anywhere near this size, you can go ahead and use it to pre-shape the whole bar. I'm just demonstrating here how you'd go about it if you don't have anything like that around. At this point, the only thing I need to do is to forge the curved pointed tips that I usually use on my pickup tongs. So here I have the two pieces that I'm going to be welding today. I'm just going to run through it right now because it's probably going to be pretty hard to make out what I'm doing when I'm actually in the fire. But I'm going to be heating up these two pieces in the fire, and then when they're ready to go together, I'm going to pick up the square block and set it on top of the flat plate of steel. At this point, the surfaces that are in full contact with each other will tack together. They won't be welded, but they will be stuck together enough that it will take a fair amount of effort to separate them. And the last thing that I'll be doing is that I'll be using the tongs to tap the surface of the square block, and this will help to reinforce that bond. And this all works because I can support everything with a pair of tongs with one hand, and I have the other hand free to use the tweezers to set everything up. At this point, I'm heating both pieces at approximately the same rate, but in a minute I'll be repositioning them so the square block is getting most of the heat and I'm just keeping the flat plate warm so that when I'm ready to put them together, they both have a good body of heat in them. At this point, I'm quite a bit further along. I've had the two pieces heating up separately so I can bring them both up to their optimum temperature separately. And now I'm getting ready to move them together and to actually set them in position. And here you can see a good example of why tongs are a problem when you're trying to work in a fire. You can see how I need both hands to be able to get the ends of the tongs onto that flat plate of steel. But these tweezers are really easy to control with one hand. For this test, I decided not to clean off any of the scale on either piece. So this is the flux just applied to the surface, and basically the only areas that are going to stick are the areas where the flux was able to dissolve the scale and flush it away. So I'm sure the pieces will stick, but it won't be a full weld. So if I can get this to work, a properly prepared pieces should work just fine. So the pieces are stuck together, and again, I don't have any idea how well they're stuck together, but they are acting as one piece. So I'm going to bury the whole thing in the fire and bring it back up to welding heat. And at that point, I should be able to just reach into the fire and pull the piece out as a unit and bring it over to the anvil to finish tack welding both pieces together. So despite the slight fumble at the anvil, this turned out to be a good experiment. The two pieces are stuck together. I was able to do a little bit of forging on the base plate to straighten it out, and everything held. So I'm really pleased with how everything turned out, because this would be really an impossible weld to do if you had to take it out of the fire as a drop tong weld. So normally I would go ahead and complete the welding process by doing all the welding heats, but I'm not going to bother with the rest of the welding heats here because the point of this video was just to see whether I could get the weld set up. But despite that, you can see how these pieces are going to stick together. So here's another look at the pair of tongs. I know sometimes I call these tweezers and sometimes I call them tongs. They do remind me a lot of the colonial pipe tongs that were used to take an ember out of the fireplace to light your pipe. So maybe that's why, the confusion. But in either case, they worked out really well, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of these.